Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mindsets podcast. Now, today I'm joined by Hercules, and Hercules is going to jump in and do his introduction as usual on this podcast. But before I do, I want to say massive thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And for everyone that's joining us, we've got quite a lot to cover in this episode.
We do.
So let's jump straight into it. Do you want to give us a run through of who you are, where you came from, what you do?
Yes. So hi, I'm Hercules Nicolaou. I'm from London. I'm 30 years old. I am a business owner, self-proclaimed endurance athlete, and mindset coach.
Okay, now this is why we're going to have a lot to cover. But the first thing you said is that you're from London and you've got a name, Hercules Nicolaou.
Yeah.
So where does the name come from?
So I'm Greek Cypriot by background. So it's actually pronounced differently. Like my family would call me Iaglis, which is like the Cypriot, or Hercules. So Hercules is the direct English translation. But yeah, so that's my granddad's name as well. Literally exact same name. So I was named after him.
Did you spend a lot of time going over to Greece when you were younger?
Yeah. So Cyprus, which is, I mean, it's a Greek island.
Yeah.
But, a lot of childhood was like 6 weeks summer over there with my Greek family. My mum and dad split up when we were quite young. So we would like go over there and spend time with our family, me and my siblings. So it was almost like not half and half, but yeah, like a lot of my time was over there as well.
When I was young, I was quite fortunate. I spent a lot of my summers over in Greece as well.
Yeah,
and like,
in Greece.
So my grandfather used to have a relatively small boat out there.
Nice.
And I mean that. I'm not saying like we're talking yacht. Like I'm from a very well-off background, not at all.
Yeah.
But we used to go out there and have access to it for a few weeks. So we used to sail around some of the islands. And in reality, and this is what I mean, we weren't in a particularly great financial situation.
Yeah.
So we could go over and we could spend a few weeks out there and not really spend a lot of money because we were sleeping on a boat that wasn't, we didn't have to pay for. But yeah, no, absolutely loved growing up over there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it definitely wouldn't be quite the same level.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was interesting. Now, one of the things that I also want to mention is before today, people will be aware that Ruby Lola is a friend of the show.
Yes.
She's got the Personal Best podcast, which you've also been on.
Yes.
So I've obviously done my homework for this. I'm sure some other people that are listening to this might have already listened to that one as well. I wanted to throw back kind of in time to where you mentioned on her podcast, there was a bit of an incident one day where you were with your dad. I believe you're around 7 years old.
Yeah.
And things got a bit mad. Do you want to take us through it?
So it's quite funny as well. This is like one of my earliest. I feel like I can't remember anything before this, which is quite weird. I don't know whether it was the trauma from it, but yeah, I was at my grandmother's house, and I remember just like having I was a young kid, 7 years old, I had a strange taste in my mouth and like a bloody taste. And I said to my dad, there's blood in my mouth. And his kind of reaction was, you probably bit your lip or something like that, in which we were sort of like looking because I was a bit panicky. And literally 30 seconds later, my dad and my family just said that I was just vomiting. Blood was just coming out my mouth. It was just like all over the bathroom, all over the sink. They took me out to the drive, obviously called an ambulance. My mum had drove over. She thought I'd been hit by a car because there was so much blood like all over the drive. Basically, I'd suffered a hemorrhage, like a brain hemorrhage, really young. Do you know, I've spoke about this before, actually. That's the first time I've spoke about it and almost got shivers. I was really try to remember being back there. Yeah, it just freaked me out a little bit. But yeah, so I went through that quite early on. It was pretty stressful for my family. I was in hospital a lot. And after that happened, I had actually obviously had like a blood transfusion and stuff like that. And I ended up with like a really weird skin condition from it where I lost loads of my pigmentation in the process of probably the trauma, the transfusion. My body didn't react too well. So I ended up with like a loss of pigmentation in like big blotches like all over my body. Because I'm quite like tanned anyway, they were like super noticeable. So from that, yeah, we were going back up to like Great Ormond Street Hospital a lot as a kid. Yeah, it was a long process. But yeah, so that was yeah, it's kind of one of the first things I remember as a kid was that day.
Did it affect you in a way that you were quite worried about it happening again as a kid?
No, it was more, yeah, that's a good point. Not really. It worried me in a lot of other ways where small things would happen. This is really funny, actually. If I like, as a kid, would like maybe itch the left side of my arm, and then I'd be like, oh, I want to itch the right one now. Like even small things like that would freak me out, that I was having like a bit of a medical like crisis. I was like, that's not normal. Like something's going to go wrong again. But more the repercussions of that were, like you already said, growing up around here with a name like Hercules, I was already like a bit of a target for kids, like taking the piss in school and stuff. And then I went back with all this skin condition. So I was like more really panicked about basically just being like a target and really being worried about what other people were going to think about me.
This leads me on to a question I've got. Someone that you were familiar with around that time or moving forward was someone called Lee.
Yeah.
And I want you to explain who Lee is.
Yeah. A lot of people still call me that. It confuses a lot of people. It's quite funny, actually. So my mum's brother is called Lee. And at the time, I was having like trouble with kids in school that were like, just, giving me grief about my name. It was very like abnormal. Hey, Zeus coming to pick you up from school. It's type of stuff like that. Looking back now, it's ridiculous. But so I was really worried about going back to school with that name and like having this skin condition. So like I'd sat with my mum and I was moving school because of that. We were moving anyway, but I wanted to move school, and my mum had pulled me out of the school that we were in, and I was like, I don't want that name anymore. So we was like, well, why don't you just be called Lee after like your uncle? And because it was like Hercules, it was in there. So I just became Lee. And it was really, it was weird because my legal name wasn't Lee. So like when I got to secondary school, they are going to call you your legal name on the document. So I was like rushing to classes to be like, yeah, I'm Hercules on the register. Don't call me Hercules, call me Lee. Or like in assemblies when they would like read out Hercules, Nicolaou, and like everyone would like giggle and stuff. That was like, I like buried that name, where if it ever come up, I would say to people, it's really funny looking back. I'd be like, no, that's what Lee translates to in Greek. And like, I would just come up with a lie, like that's not my name. But people knew, and maybe once a year, I would get hit with like, so-and-so said that he like knows someone who knows you and your name's actually like Hercules. And I'd be like, no, that's a lie, like that doesn't exist. But it for me, it went quite deeper than that. Lee ended up becoming like this like safety blanket of a person. Like I was a whole different human who I could like hide behind. I think I was afraid of being Hercules. How can I be called Hercules and be overweight, be this, be like in financial trouble, not be confident? Like I don't deserve it almost. So it took me ages to like almost step back into who I really was as I got older. But yeah.
I think part of the difficult thing with that is it's obviously teenage years, and so much goes on in teenage years. You're dealing with a lot of different people. And when I was a teenager, not to the same extent. So I don't talk about it a lot here. Sometimes I introduce the podcast by saying I'm your host, Angus Cook. I actually don't like my first name.
Yeah.
I've made my parents aware of it. Interestingly, I asked what they also considered to call me. The other options weren't much better. So like Angus is what I've got. However, I used to live through nicknames.
Yeah.
And for me, in a way, in order to be confident enough to do things, when I was younger, I was also a little bit overweight.
Yeah.
I had a good friendship group, but it was not like the popular group in school.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. I still sometimes wanted to hang out with them, as everyone does. But I would almost sort of think about the way that I would feel if I was this type of person.
Yeah.
And I would give myself a character, and I wouldn't actually go out and try and be that character, but I would mentally process how they would think, and then I'd be like, cool, can I bring that into who I am?
Yeah, man.
And so it's a lot of trying to find who I was by not being myself.
Yeah.
And slowly that just gets so tiring because you're having to bury something on repeat.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is common for a lot of young people, like we do that, but I think I took it extreme. Like,
yeah, big time.
Lee was same, like what you just said is interesting. So like, I realistically looking back had like no real friendship group at school. I was like, Lee was someone that like wanted to make everyone laugh, and I would like be outrageous. Like, not, I wasn't like a horrible kid, but I would be like the one that would just do stupid things like to get attention, to make other people laugh. And but I never really had like a solid group of, yeah, they're my like friends. I don't see anyone from school now, like not a soul. And looking back, like it was quite, yeah, it was tiring, but it was isolating as well. Like I was always trying to fit in with different people, so I would like chameleon myself to be like, okay, do I want to be like them or these guys? Like, who do I want to be? Because I just didn't want to be myself, which is ironic because now I enjoy being who I am. But it takes you a while to accept that, because if you're worried, if you're anticipating how everyone else sees you as opposed to just like accepting who you are, then you're never going to be comfortable, because you're worried about, does who I am now get the reaction that I want from others, as opposed to, am I just enjoying and being myself? So it's like a fine line of self-sabotaging.
But at the same time, when you were kind of going through this discovery phase of yourself and Lee, you then kind of went through education and you moved on to getting into music and that sort of thing. So you went to Point Blank Music School. I believe.
Yeah.
Was that something that you were deeply passionate about at the time, or is it kind of just where you thought you should go?
Yeah, no, deeply passionate about it. I still am now. So, granted, what I just said about school, I did have one friend who we bump into each other randomly sometimes actually in the shops, but he kind of got me into like playing guitar and music. And music is like an outlet for me in the same way like sport is. It's a creative expression. It was something that I was really passionate about. I was always really into music. So I started playing guitar quite early on, and then I wanted to start making my own music. So I got into like production and stuff like that. So eventually it led me to like going on and doing a course and stuff. So I basically used to release a lot of music. It's all like on Spotify and stuff like that. I was really passionate about that. And at one point I really wanted it to be a career, but it was such an unenjoyable industry and like so cutthroat that it just stripped all the pleasure out of it. So for me, it's more of a personal, behind closed doors passion I have now. Like however many times a week I'll pick up the guitar, sit there, zone out. For me, it's like quite a meditative thing, rather than putting the pressure on of like, I need to finish this song, I need to do that and stuff like that. So, but yeah.
And then when you were kind of going into that, you mentioned that obviously sport is a passion now. Was sport a passion through you growing up as well? It wasn't?
No.
So you were more on the creative side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, it depends how you define sport, like in the traditional terms now and how I am now. No, I like grew up skateboarding like my whole childhood, which in the least cringy way, like probably saved me, because I had done that with people that I didn't go to school with, and it was like very outcasty. Sounds like very just typical what you'd think of that sport, but yeah, it was like quite outcasty, just all people from different schools, and I would do that like every evening. So I was kind of like being active, but not in the same way now, and it wasn't really about the health and fitness benefit. It was more just like a hobby that I had. But no, I hated sport, like hated PE, hated all of that stuff.
One of the things I find really funny about that is obviously I wasn't part of the skating crowd. I really wish I could have been, but I just didn't have the ability. And I trust me, I tried on my own. But one of the things that I find really interesting about skateboarding is on a top level, it's extremely creative.
Yeah.
It's extremely painful.
There's
a lot of pain, and you learn a lot about yourself through that. And there's a lot of commitment in there. So I've always thought that that's quite interesting. I know a lot of people back when I was at school, if I'd gone up to them and been like, you're so creative and you really deal with your pain well, they'd be like, fuck off. Like, it's not like that. But no, I think that's what comes through with like your creative side, especially going towards music. But then after you had finished at college, you have been to university.
No.
It was open university.
Yeah, and I never finished it.
What taught me through that? How come you went to the open university? Well, you did the open university.
So, like when I finished school, I did like 3 months of sixth form, quit. I did like 2 months of media at college, quit. Did open university, quit, because my priorities were just not in check. I like was so focused on instant gratification that I couldn't delay anything. So it was bouncing from one, like, honestly, I reckon I've had more jobs than most people will have in a lifetime, more cars, more, and I had no money then, by the way. It was just like ridiculous. I've lived on a sofa like multiple times in my early 20s from just poor choices, but I was like bouncing around all over the shop because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know who I wanted to be because I didn't want to be myself. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll just like be an accountant because that'll be a good job. And then being like, why am I doing this? I don't even like it. So the same with like sixth form media. So I bounced around a lot, but the best thing that I'd done was like get more stuck into work rather than like actual jobs and building my way up there, which kind of led me to my later career. But I never really finished any of my studies except for music.
But then you've clearly found a bit of a passion toward entrepreneurship, probably from doing so much. So where did that come from? Where did you start to feel that way?
I think it was like working in different environments. No matter what job I went into, I couldn't help but... So this was the same at school as well. I would like naturally kind of just be like, I'm taking the lead on anything. If it's a captain, I'm the captain. Like, maybe it's an ego thing, but I just liked steering my own ship. So I think it's more of a trust thing. I didn't like putting trust in other people. So I'm like, I'll handle this one, thanks. So any job that I went into, I would like very quickly they would be like, do you want to get a promotion? Like, do you want to work, like offer me career path? I'm talking like working in pubs and stuff like that, or retail, whatever it is. So I always felt like I could naturally offer something in a sort of like career environment, work environment, wherever it was, business basically. I don't really necessarily know where that came from. My mum and dad always like owned their own small businesses and run stuff themselves, so I'd kind of seen what that grind was like. But I really got into like, the way I got into entrepreneurship is because I started taking like reading seriously and self-development and stuff like that, and like got into learning knowledge myself. And from there, like there was a moment where I was like, I need to sort my life out, but I felt like I had a higher knowledge of the roles that I was in. So it got to the point where I was like, I need to do something for myself here, because otherwise I'm going to go down this route forever and forever feel like I'm trapped by listening to someone else tell me what to do and how I should do something, when actually I think I know a better way or a different way of doing it that I would prefer to do. So I bounced around loads and loads of jobs, retail, hospitality, stuff like that. And finally I kind of placed myself in an office working in marketing. Stayed there for like probably the most part of a year, and that was the job that I'd quit eventually to start my own business. So that one kind of grounded me in the office environment, a little bit more in detail of what it really takes to start a business, because it was a startup. And then it kind of gave me the energy and belief to be like, I could do this myself. So yeah, which led me on to the next part. Yeah.
Which is, so what are you now running? Because there's a couple of things.
So like the main business has been running for 7 years. I started with a friend, Owen, which is called GoGetters. It's a food delivery app that focuses only on local independent owned restaurants. So no major chains. Like if you went on Deliveroo now, you would see all the chain owned big corporate at the top. And we don't list any of them. We just focus on the small independent chains in like the southeast of UK. So yeah, we started that literally like with nothing. I think at the time I was maybe like $5,000 deep in a credit card. And we literally got a mobile phone. I had a car on finance, and it was, let's put this number out and people can text us where they want us to pick up from, and we'll go around and deliver it. And we'll just add like £5 on top for delivery. And from the day we said we would do that, non-stop for 2 years. I reckon we worked every day for like, and I sound like I'm being over the top, but like 18 hours. And also I'm not saying that that's healthy or the way to do it. That's just what we done. because we were a delivery company, people were just texting us all the time and we wanted to take any work we could get. Eventually we built a website and an app because we found a developer who we cut in on the business with some equity. And it was a very small operation, like 3-4 of us. We had like 6 drivers that were just friends. And COVID happened and it just changed things for us because every restaurant all of a sudden had to be delivery. People's like new Friday night was a takeaway. Everyone had disposable money because like they were on furlough and weren't really spending money. So we like 10x'd overnight. It was insane. And now we've got maybe like 300-400 staff out on the road. Full time in the office, there's probably like 10 to 15 people. But I mean, it was a really hard road to get where we are now. It was really tough. It was really difficult. We didn't have any experience. We didn't really have any mentors. We didn't have like we didn't have the finance to do it. Everything was like super bootstrapped and like really organic. But arguably, I think it was the best way we could have ever done it because we learned so much ourselves, so much like growth and character development in when like the boats are burnt, like you have to find a way to make it work. I had lost in them 2 years when we first started. I lost my girlfriend at the time. I had to move out of my flat because I couldn't pay rent. I was living on Owen's mum's sofa. I'd borrowed my sister's deposit for her like mortgage on her house because I had a VAT bill from HMRC that I didn't even know was coming in that we had to pay. She didn't even tell her boyfriend at the time. She'd like lent me it, and I was like, I don't know how. I had no idea. She was like, I need it back in 3 weeks, and I was like, yeah, no worries. No idea how I was going to get that back, which was like a substantial amount of money. We just went like our office kept getting like robbed. We got like robbed in person, like because we were like going around delivering. It was just such a nightmare. Yeah, it was a real tough. If there was so many moments where we could have just gone, let's leave this one. Let's just throw in the towel. Yeah.
So I've got a quote from one of your videos actually,
yeah,
which I really liked, which is, if you feel like everything's burying you right now,
yeah,
remember that's how you plant a seed,
yeah,
and that's how something grows.
Yes.
And I really like from that situation, a lot of people, if you presented someone's path to success,
yeah,
and you included all of those things,
yeah,
you would be insane to go, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You would naturally be like, I don't want that path.
Yeah.
But ultimately that is the path that sometimes can take you to where you need to go. And like you said,
yeah,
can teach you the most lessons.
I used to be a very why me guy, right? Like, why don't I have parents that are loaded that can give me the money? Why can't I have someone give me like $100,000 to start this business, whatever it is? And now I'm like, that was the most important part of my life so far, because I became a man. Like, I became someone who had to deal with awkward situations, had to walk into a restaurant and be like, I'm signing this guy up no matter what, because I've got bills to pay. He has to come on our app. I'm not taking no for an answer. Like, had to deal with legal situations, documents I didn't even know existed before. Like, all these things that were happening that by doing them, now you can study something, you can read it, but nothing teaches you more than actually doing it. So now when I look back and I look at being able to like maybe start a business again or do something again, I'm like, I've walked this path before. Like, I can do this again now and I can do it better. I used to look at everything that went wrong as mistakes and failures, but now I'm like, no, they were just like really, really good lessons in how to do something better next time. So yeah, it might be hard, but it's like supposed to be hard. That is your roots being planted. Look at anyone that's done something impressive, you know, in their life, or is considered like a strong person. I know it's such a typical one, but like, look at Goggins. Like, do you think he got that mindset from being ripped his whole life? The guy had to look himself in the mirror and like not even be able to look himself in the eyes, cry when he looks at himself, be overweight, be in that mess to go, right, let's swing the pendulum the other way. So yeah,
I'm interested to know, obviously, a lot of your content as well now.
Yeah.
We'll get into why this is the case, but it's around fitness, a lot of running, doing all sorts of crazy challenges as well. But where along this journey did fitness come into your life?
Yeah, so probably like fairly recently to a serious extent. So when we'd like started the business, we were still like training, hitting the gym every day, but like pretty like it's not really whatever, go in and bench and like just bro workouts, like nothing serious. Wasn't really taking fitness seriously. When in them 2 years when things got like really hard, I'd like let myself go because I was just so stressed. Like all I was focusing on was like the business. So I got like pretty, not as overweight as I'd been before, but like I was out of shape. I wasn't looking good. Fitness was on the floor, but really more like had no motivation to like wake up early. It would like just wanted, there was a point where I got really depressed, and even like getting out of bed was a win. I would like find lies to get out of going to see like family, friends, anything, because I just didn't want to go outside the house. I'd kind of like given up really, and I knew that like it got to the point where the pain of staying this human, like just maintaining this life, is actually going to be far harder than the pain of like actually changing and becoming someone else. And that just clicked for me, and I was like, right, we got to do something here. So it wasn't as like heavy as now, but I started to get into taking gym a little bit more seriously, like lifting more seriously, starting to see some results. Like it's funny because you do it for like 2-3 months and nothing changes. So that's why we just give up so many times. So I've done that so many times before, but this time I was like, I wasn't focused on the results. I was focused on the habit and like trying to create a new life. So that kind of snowballed into, let me try like running and stuff like that, which has only really been in the last probably 2-3 years. I had a shoulder injury, so I couldn't train, got out of shape again. And then I was like, well, the only thing I can do now is run, because that's the only thing that was pain-free. And I realized that like running, not saying it's harder than anything else, for me personally, I was like, this is the hardest workout I've ever done. How this is so unenjoyable, like 5 minutes was impossible. So I was like, if I can overcome this, I can literally like do anything. This has got to be the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. So yeah, fast forward a couple of years, and I just kept upping the mileage slowly and just like really working on paces and races and stuff like that. And I just fell in love with running, not as a sport, but I see it as like a tool for resilience in life. I'm like, if I can go out and get 10K done, even 5K, 20K, whatever it is, because every second that you're running, your mind is like, we could just stop, like, oh, this is a bit long, or like slow down, whatever it is. I'm like, if I can get over that, I can get over the procrastination at the keyboard. No, keep going until this email is finished, or until this piece of work done, or the project's finished. So it's like a catalyst in my life for other stuff. It's how I kind of see it. It's like my daily discomfort. So it's just become routine and part of my life really at this point.
I think I got into running relatively recently, and people that have been listening to other episodes will know this, so I'm not going to go too into it.
Yeah.
But I, from a young age, I was interested in the gym. And some people, if you're looking at me on the video right now, you might be like, why isn't he absolutely huge?
Yeah.
Well, I probably
You're not small though, are you?
I mean, I wasn't. I'm a tall guy, so
Yeah.
I'm going to take that excuse. The other thing is that I have pretty much always trained by myself, and I've never had a coach or anything like that. Especially in the gym. So I have not been training optimally, anything like that. However, in more recent years, I've learned a lot more about how the body works, everything like that. And I train with a focus in mind. But one thing that this time last year, if I'm being honest, was a bit of an insecurity, was the fact that yes, I felt strong. Yes, I felt athletic. But in truth, if you told me, like, if you'd come up to me as a stranger, because we didn't know each other a year ago, and you were like, your mum has just called me and like she's 5K away and there's an emergency and like my car's not about.
Yeah.
I was insecure about the amount of time it would take me to get there, because like I knew running for me was not one of my strengths. It wasn't something I could do. And when I was younger, I used to do cross country and stuff like that. So I started being like, come on, we've got to do this. And then along the process of trying to get better at it, I actually discovered what it could give back for me mentally.
Yeah, man.
And it's a mixture of trying to clear away insecurity, but also it's now become a way for me to stop overthinking about situations.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think kind of combining the two, one of the things people spend most of the time overthinking is insecurities.
Yeah.
and you've made a point this as well in some of your content about the fact that no one notices your insecurities as much as you do, and you hyperfixate on them. And I wonder if there's something through your journey, because you said that you obviously, when you were younger, you probably weren't too happy with your body image and how you've grown up, especially because you had this skin pigmentation thing, which you feel you still have now, and I would not notice.
Yeah, it's correct. Do you know what? I've just come back from holiday, so they always go with a tan. I have like a couple staple trademark ones that just stay, but yeah.
It's something that is all too common, and I mean, to a degree, everyone does it because mirrors exist, and it's very difficult when there is a mirror to not just check that everything's okay, and that we're generally pretty bad at. And if people are starting to relate to that a little bit, well, one of the sections of this podcast is directly relatable to the listeners, because we have listener questions.
Right.
So if you're listening to this and you're unfamiliar with this this section, every week before a guest comes on, I put out sometimes who the guest is, or I drop some hints.
Nice.
And I see if we can get some listener questions that are directly from you guys, so you get the responses you want. This isn't just a selfish podcast. So question 1 is actually coming from Ruby. I think it's only fair.
Cool. I was with her last night on the track, actually.
Yeah, she mentioned. So she said, what's something you struggle with?
Okay, that's a good question. We're out in me here. I'm going to be super vulnerable here. I'm going to try and pick out of 2. One is, I don't talk about this a lot, and I will at some point in my life, but I have like really struggled with like eating habits throughout my life. I've pretty much running kind of healed that for me, actually, but that's a different topic. But I really struggled with like eating disorders through late teens, early 20s, mainly like just going to, I just had like binge eating issues, and then I would starve myself, or I'd like have to work out like a maniac because everything was calories in, calories out, bad food, good food. I'd created such a bad environment. It wasn't about how food to me was like a gratification, because growing up, whatever had happened, we always had like junk food or snacks to turn to, and I developed a really bad habit with that like quite early on, which is how I ended up getting quite overweight. And then the flip side of that was I would starve myself off the back of that. So maybe I'd eat loads in 2 days, and then I'm like fast for 2 days. So eating for me has like always been a grey area in my life that I, in the last couple of years, feel like I have kind of nailed, but it still creeps back up for sure. But yeah, body, which goes hand in hand with like body image. I've been like 9-10% body fat and been like, I'm overweight. Like literally looked in the mirror and been like, I'm disgusting, and like really lacked confidence. So, which I'm not now, but yeah, body image and like stuff like that is something that always creeps back up like once a quarter to say hello.
And again, I think that's weirdly not diagnosed enough. A lot of people. And so I had a guest, Emily Merry, on a few episodes back now, but she goes through the entire process of how she dealt with it, what she was thinking mentally. And a lot of people messaged and said, I didn't know that everyone, you know, maybe going through something similar, or I didn't really.
Embarrassing. People get embarrassed by it.
It is one of those things that you can't, it's not a standard, like especially not dinner time topic, but like it's not something that comes up. It's quite uncomfortable to talk about.
Well, it's like if your mate says to you like, hey, like, yeah, how's your week been, man? Oh yeah, like not bad. I'm really struggling with like thinking that I look like shit. What a downer at the pub.
And it's like how you don't really want to put your mate in that position. But to be honest, I mean, if my mate said that to me, I'd be taken aback, but at least I could then discuss it with them. It's just not something that you really want to put your friends in a situation of naturally, but is something that, especially through this podcast, we're trying to push through. But let's move on to the second question. So second question is from Tom. So Tom wants to know, are you driven by fear of failure or attractiveness of reward?
That's actually such a good question, first of all. Thanks, Tom. I'm going to go 70-30 on that. I think 70% is fear of failure, and that might not be the right way it should be, but I've always had growing up, bless him, great guy, I love him. My dad made a lot of mistakes, did a lot of things, showed me the way of how to not do a lot of things, and my fear has always been like going down that same route and becoming that. So I am driven a lot by like not wanting to let people down or let myself down in life. So there is which is like done me well in a lot of ways in terms of if I'm like out for a run, I'm like, even if I'm absolutely done, I'm like, there's no way I'm not hitting this time. Like I definitely do have a fear of failing. But then there is a 30% where it's like, yeah, if I can achieve this, I'm actually going to get this. It's going to be great, and that's the reward. So, I think they're both really useful, by the way, as well. I think if you can balance both of them,
I think that's a really good answer. I don't think it should be one or the other. No, I think you should try and find your balance that works for you.
For sure.
Cool. So the last question is actually anonymous. I thought it was a really good question, so I wanted to bring it in. So running, especially, but fitness in general, has definitely become part of your life.
Yes.
And it seems like it is something you use to get out of your head on some days and push you to new levels. What if the particular session that you have had puts you in a worse mental state? Like it was a bad session.
Yeah, it's really.
So how do you deal with that?
I'll get back to you when I learn how to deal with it. That's a good question. For me, I've said this before. I used to try and meditate, and like it hasn't really ever clicked to me. Sit on YouTube, do this in a room. I just like wasn't for me. Meditating is essentially like mindfulness, right? You're present in the moment, and I found that running was that for me. When I was running, I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm just thinking about breathing and stepping. So running became like meditation for me. When I started focusing on like race goals and stuff like that, took that away a little bit. So I said it a couple of days on my story, actually. I was like, when I was in Mexico, I had a couple of really bad runs and they kind of got in my head. But how you have to look at it is, the way that I get over that is, well, it would have been worse if I didn't go, which is like, okay, you wanted to run this pace, you ran 10 seconds slower, but you still went out and run, end of. So I think you got to focus on the wins. Like every workout is a win. You have a body, you have a privilege of moving it. A lot of people don't exercise that privilege. A lot of people are in hospital beds now that would love to have your situation. You've gone out there, you've moved. So what? It wasn't the best workout. It's a workout. So I just remind myself of that, really, I think.
I like that answer. I think that's useful, because sometimes when it does all go completely wrong, you do have to understand how to take a silver lining. Otherwise you will just downward spiral and you won't want to do the next one. And really you should try and find the next one as an opportunity to improve. But even again, if that one somehow is worse, you still need to take the positives. Okay, you still did it twice.
Well, there's two things in that. It's like, one, we're human. Everyone, like, you're not perfect all the time. You just think you have to be because of everything you see online, but none of them guys are perfect either. But two, it's like, when something's bad, it's a good thing, because being bad at something is the first step to being good at it. It means you've got like an exciting journey of growth. If you were just 100% in everything, well, that's completed. Next thing. So like, kind of take a bit of comfort. I look at running, for example, of it's exciting because there's still growth to be had. It's like never completed. So it doesn't matter if something's bad. That means there's room to improve.
Yeah, I like that. It's also like biologically there's a threshold for like serotonin and getting a reward. If you start doing something and you're naturally pretty good at it, you might not be the best at it, but you're naturally pretty good at it, your threshold for the reward is way lower than if you started and you were bad. And then you get a bit better. Like that tiny bit better gives you as much of a good feeling as when you started and you were okay at something. But then it's very difficult from there to continue to keep getting the same level of reward when you started doing something you're really good at. And so sometimes, and Leo said this a couple of episodes back, it's a lot easier to steer a ship that's moving. And so get going, and then you can figure it out along the way, and you'll find ways to improve and go faster and get better and continue. Okay, so this kind of leads me into doing something pretty drastic.
Let's do it.
So a lot of people, when they're in their 20s, I am now, I'm 27. I am, honestly, terrified of becoming 30. But you have reframed it from being, let me do 30 things before I'm 30. Let me do 30 things when I am 30. So talk me through this, and what are some of the things you're doing?
So like, same thing, 27, one day just went, you're 30 soon. And it like terrified me, because it's like, can I still like dress cool at 30? Like, do I have to have traveled the world? I haven't, what kind of money have I had to have made? Because you look at like footballers are 30-year-old and things like that. So I started getting in my own head about turning 30 and a bit worried that I hadn't achieved what I wanted to achieve. Kind of like went on Google about that and just noticed everything was like 30 things you should do before you're 30. Here's 30 things you should try before you're 30. And I was like, this is such a poor narrative, as if 30 is the end.
Your life is over.
30 is still young. Like, arguably, I'm 30 now. I'm fit as has ever been. But so I kind of wanted to put a spin on that and I'm going to do 30 at 30. So it's like 30 challenges at 30 years old to become the best version of myself. And that isn't just exclusive to fitness at all. So I wanted to make it about becoming a better man, a better human, and a better athlete along the way. So a few of the things in there, for example, are I've got like a 100k run on a track, like London Marathon's in there. I'm going to attempt to break a Guinness World Record, run a sub 40 10k. But then there's some other things in there which are like, take all my immediate family members out for a day, just me and them, like face my insecurities publicly, perform my art live, because I've always been really scared about performing any music live. So it's all things that are like designed to get me out of my comfort zone. So by the end of the year, it's like, right, I'm set up for the best decade now. I've become this resilient machine who's faced all these fears. The 30s are going to be way better than my 20s, because I think people just assume everyone's on a separate timeline. That's the issue, because we all start in different places financially, like demographically, wherever you live, how you were brought up, whatever it is. That's like your own unique timeline. So you might look at someone at 30 that's bought a house, is married, has kids, all them things, and think, oh, I need to do that as well. But no, just do them at 33, 34. Do them when it's right for you. So yeah, the whole year is designed about doing what feels right for me. I feel like I've trained a lot to bring me to this kind of like moment in my life where it's, let's just send it.
I think one of the things that I quite like about it is obviously with the spread of challenges that you're doing, and them not all necessarily just being fitness based, but kind of life balancing based as well, is you're going to inspire quite a few people along the way, but also it's something that people will get invested in a little bit. And I think that in the way of inspiring, not everyone's going to watch you do a 100k run and be like, I'm so going to do that next Saturday.
No, of course not.
But the thing with the family, you know, it, especially in this sort of period after COVID, where for a while we were so bunched up and close with our family that we loved it and then we hated it. And then afterwards we were like, oh, I can go out again. I can see my friends. Oh, I'll see my family as and when. But in reality, for some people, it's like broken the family up a bit.
100%, man.
And so it's trying to pull people back together.
I agree.
And also demonstrating your art, I think, is a really, really cool thing to do, because you never know where that could go.
Exactly. And like some of the other ones I'm excited about is like, I've just got 30 random acts of kindness that I'm doing throughout the year. Things like that, where it's just like teaching me to be a better human where I can, without like having to feel so much pressure on it. Like, it's not hard to make small little changes over time that improve not just your life, but the people's lives around you. That doesn't always have to be like going for a run or going to the gym. There's so many other ways to like delay that gratification and feel good about yourself longer term, that aren't just fitness, that are more like mindset based and doing things for yourself. So for example, I'm journaling every day and like doing daily like sort of prompts to myself. They're not like massively public. I will do videos on them, but like I'm talking to myself in a very different way. My inner dialogue has changed already since I started this in Feb, because I'm like nurturing my mind more, not just my body. Because arguably I've done like really hard fitness stuff, got in really good shape, and like been as miserable as ever. Like, that's only one piece, that's only like one pillar of your like temple, let's call it, that you need to hold up hold the foundations down. I think people really focus on fitness, which is a good one, because fitness does help your mindset, but only to an extent. Like, you've got to look at your life from all angles. I think
it's definitely not one solution. It can be a great thing, and
it's a good solution. But it's not everything.
If you put all your eggs in that basket, it's not going to be it. So now, you're a life coach, so you deal
Yes.
with people on a
Yeah.
relatively frequent basis with this as well. But I kind of want to see how you deal with your own situation. So
Yeah.
another staple part of this podcast is giving a younger version of yourself 3 pieces of advice. So
Yeah.
I want you to imagine in this room, there is 1 or 3 different versions of a younger you.
Yeah.
It's just you guys in this room. What would you tell yourself?
Okay. Let's. I'm gonna pick some different ages, but I'm gonna like start at like, let's say 11-year-old me, and like my, not even really advice. Like what I would say to him is like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like you are loved. Like there is nothing wrong with you. I was so worried at that time of like parents splitting up and everything I'd gone through in school and like trying to fit in, that I was just like an unlovable person. So that would be like number 1. Number 2 would be to 21-year-old me. And that would be, I would tell him like the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's going to be greener where you water it. Because I was convinced like, oh, when I go and travel there, when I earn this, and when I have this girlfriend and that, and like, I was convinced that my happiness would fall into place when I had like reached a certain goal, like this utopia. Everyone would like sing, there'd be a parade. Oh, you're happy now. And that's not how it works. Happiness is a state of mind. You can't always be focused on making the best decision. You got to be focused on making the best out of the decision that you made. So things might not be optimal, but there's always ways to be grateful. And where else? Another one would have to be, another piece of advice would just be like, chill out, just take it all in, like be present, look around, because now I can look back and go, yeah, them good old days, you didn't even know you were in them when they were happening, because you were so focused on where you're going. And the grind is important, working hard is important, but looking back, I think I could have enjoyed holidays, parties, dates, a lot of things more if I wasn't so focused on the work. Like you have to enjoy life as well, and I think that's important. I don't think I was very good in that department throughout my 20s because I just wanted to like be someone, but you are someone now. Without the followers, the money, the clout, all these things, you're somebody. You don't need them things to be important, and I didn't realize that, and I wasn't present in a lot of situations where I should have been, that I wish I could go back now and enjoy.
Solid piece of advice. And I think like the aim of that, as much as it is directly relatable to you, is purposes that someone else might
hope so
fine tune one of those. Now the final sort of segment of this podcast is that I like to have, and I'm not taking credit for inventing this idea, I like to have each guest ask a question for the next guest.
I'm excited.
With no idea who that is. Now typically the guests try and ask a deep question. Now, for those of you that haven't listened to it, go back and listen to Chuck's episode, obviously. That's the last one. But Chuck's got a good sense of humor. So his question was cheesecake or donuts, and why?
This is the lesser of the deep questions. Cheesecake.
Why?
Sure. Donut is like a trigger food for me.
Really?
Like, if I really, this is bad by the way, but donuts are one of the foods that I really like, considered like a bad food. If I like eat a donut, I feel like super guilty about it. Cheesecake, I just love cheesecake as well, like a good solid New York standard cheesecake. It's nice, it's light. I feel like we're doing a food review.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is what I want to know though is if a standard vanilla New York cheesecake, which I agree, I think is the best cheesecake. What are we putting on the top donut tier for comparison?
Okay, that's good. Do you know what? The Krispy Kreme original glaze with the raspberry inside.
Really? You're a raspberry man?
Simple man. I'm fruit over chocolate always.
Okay, because I just think you can't go wrong with just an original.
No, yeah. Like if I was to feeling a little bit fruity, I'd have raspberry. But original, I am with you.
This might break people's mind. On the old boxes, I don't know if it's still a thing, it would say that you should take your donut and you should put it on a plate, put it in the microwave for 8 seconds.
Yeah,
and it's
I knew
perfect.
that. Yeah,
it changes the game.
Have you been to the Krispy Kreme drive-thru where you can get them hot? Oh, have you been?
Yeah, it's different.
Crazy, man.
That's where you gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of rounded us off on a light note, which I like. But before I go to the next episode, I
Yes.
obviously need your question
Yes.
for the next guest. So go ahead, ask whatever you like.
So my question would be, if you could go back in time, like what day would you relive, or memory or moment from your life? If you could relive any moment, what one would you relive and why?
Okay, fantastic question. So everyone that's listened to that and is quite intrigued what the next person might answer to that, it will be out in a week. So feel free to follow along, subscribe to all the different places. I am at mindsets_podcast, literally on everything. I got quite lucky with that. For those that aren't aware, the mindsets thing, by the way, isn't just because it's all about talking about your mind. It's the worst play on words you ever heard. Mindsets, there's a relation to fitness in there as well. So that's where you can find me. Now, Hercules, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so Instagram, mine is Hercules, spelled with 2 U's. So HERCUULES. TikTok is Walking with Hercules, all one word, and that is all the platforms I'm on.
Okay, amazing. So also for anyone that isn't already, go and show some massive support, because you are doing some huge things this year.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And I'm very excited to see, and I will be sharing those along the way as well. Nice. So for everyone that's joined us today, a massive thank you for tuning in. Well done for finding it. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode.